Erlangzi stared wide-eyed, gazing straight at the thatched roof and mud walls, covered in a dark yellow quilt that emitted a faint, musty smell. Beside him, his older brother Han Zhu lay sound asleep, emitting occasional snores of varying intensity. About half a yard away from the bed stood a mud wall, cracked over time, with inconspicuous fissures through which faint complaints from Han's mother could be heard, occasionally mixed with the sound of his father smoking his dry tobacco pipe. Erlangzi slowly closed his somewhat dry eyes, forcing himself to enter a deep sleep as soon as possible. He knew very well that if he didn't fall asleep soon, he wouldn't be able to wake up early the next day to go pick firewood in the mountains with his other agreed-upon companions. Erlangzi's surname was Han, his given name was Li, a somewhat decent name that his parents couldn't come up with themselves. It was a name given by old Zhang, the only literate person in the village who had spent a few years as a reading companion to wealthy people in the city in his youth. In the village, Hanli was called Erlangzi, but he wasn't really foolish or stupid. Instead, he was one of the cleverest children in the village. Apart from his family, he rarely heard anyone formally call him by his name, Hanli. The nickname Erlangzi had stuck with him. He was called Erlangzi because there was already a child named Lungzi in the village. Other children in the village also had similar nicknames, like Guwa and Erdan, none of which sounded any better than Erlangzi. Although Hanli didn't like this nickname, he could only console himself. Hanli had an unremarkable appearance, with dark skin, just a typical rural child. But deep down, he was much more mature than his peers. Hanli longed for the richness and prosperity of the outside world, dreaming that one day he would leave this tiny village and see the outside world that old Zhang often talked about. He had never dared to mention this idea to anyone else. Otherwise, it would surely astonish the villagers. A little kid who was still wet behind the ears actually had thoughts that even adults wouldn't dare to think about lightly. Other children around Han Li's age were still running around the village chasing chickens and dogs. Han Li's family consisted of 7 people, 2 older brothers, 1 older sister, and a younger sister. He was the 4th child in the family, just 10 years old this year. The family lived in poverty, barely having a few meals with meat or fish in a year, always hovering on the edge of subsistence. At this moment, Hanli was in a daze, halfway between sleep and wakefulness, with lingering thoughts in his mind. When he went up the mountain, he must pick more red berries that his beloved younger sister liked to eat. The next day at noon, when Hanli, under the scorching sun, carried a half-human-high stack of firewood on his back, with a bag full of berries in his arms, hurrying home from the mountains, he had no idea that a visitor who would change his life had arrived at home. This visitor was a close relative, his 3rd uncle, who was said to be a big shot managing a tavern in a nearby town, the great man his parents often talked about. In the nearly 100 years of Han family history, there might have been only one relative like his 3rd uncle with a bit of status. Hanli had only seen this 3rd uncle a few times when he was very young. His older brother got a job as an apprentice to a blacksmith in the city, which was arranged by this 3rd uncle. The 3rd uncle often sent some food and necessities to his parents, taking care of their family. Therefore, Hanli had a good impression of this 3rd uncle. He knew that his parents, although they didn't say it, were grateful to him. His older brother was the pride of the family. Working as an apprentice blacksmith not only provided food and lodging, but also earned 30 copper coins a month. When he formally completed his apprenticeship and got hired by someone, he would earn even more money. Every time his parents mentioned his older brother, they were elated, as if they had become different people. Hanli, although young, admired him greatly. In his mind, the best job was already decided: to be noticed by some craftsman in the small town and be taken on as an apprentice, becoming a respectable person who lived by his skills. So when Hanli saw his third uncle, wearing brand new satin clothes, with a round face and a small mustache, he was extremely excited. After placing the firewood behind the house, he went to the front timidly to greet his third uncle, obediently saying, "Hello, third uncle," and then stood aside quietly, listening to his parents chat with his third uncle. The third uncle smiled as he looked at Hanli, praised him for being obedient and understanding, then turned to talk to his parents about the purpose of this visit. Although Hanli was still young and couldn't fully understand his third uncle's words, he roughly understood what he meant. It turned out that the tavern where his third uncle worked belonged to a martial arts sect called Seven Profound Gate, which had both outer and inner disciples. Recently, his third uncle had become an outer disciple of this sect and could recommend children aged 7 to 12 to participate in the test for recruiting inner disciples of the Seven Profound Gate. The test for recruiting inner disciples of the Seven Profound Gate, which took place every 5 years, was scheduled to begin next month. The somewhat shrewd third uncle, who had no children of his own, naturally thought of Hanli, who was of the right age. Han's father, who had always been honest and straightforward, hesitated upon hearing words like martial arts and sect that he had never heard before. He picked up his dry tobacco pipe, took a few deep puffs, then sat there silently. In the third uncle's words, the Seven Profound Gate was naturally one of the most prestigious sects within hundreds of miles. As long as one became an inner disciple, not only would they have free martial arts training and food and drink, but they would also receive a few extra pieces of silver each month. Moreover, those who participated in the test, even if they were not selected, had the opportunity to become outer disciples like the third uncle, specifically managing the business outside the Seven Profound Gate. When Hanli's father heard that there was a possibility of earning 1 or 2 silver coins each month, and also having the chance to become a respectable person like the third uncle, he finally made up his mind and agreed. The third uncle was delighted to see Hanli's father agree. He left a few taels of silver and said he would come back in a month to take Hanli away. During this time, he would prepare some good food for Hanli to strengthen him for the test. After bidding farewell to Hanli's father, the third uncle patted Hanli's head and left for the city. Although Hanli didn't fully understand what his third uncle said, he understood that going to the city could earn him a lot of money. His lifelong wish seemed about to come true, and for several nights in a row, he was so excited that he couldn't sleep. More than a month later, the third uncle came to the village on time to take Hanli away. Before leaving, Hanli's father repeatedly reminded him to be honest, tolerant in dealing with others, and not to quarrel with anyone, while his mother asked him to take care of himself, eat well, and sleep well. On the carriage, watching his parents' figures gradually fade away, Hanli bit his lip tightly, forcing himself not to let tears fall from his eyes. Although he had been more mature than other children since childhood, he was still a 10-year-old boy. This first long journey made him feel a little sad and lost. Hanli secretly made up his mind that as soon as he earned a lot of money, he would rush back and never be separated from his parents again. Hanli never imagined that the amount of money he would earn on this trip would lose its meaning to him. He unexpectedly embarked on a path different from ordinary people, stepping onto his own path of cultivation.